everyone! In today's video I'm going to show you how to paint loose watercolor florals like this one. I'm going to show you a few techniques that you'll be able to apply to any floral piece that you create on your own in the future, along with a trick that makes it really easy to correct any mistakes you might make while painting those flower petals and leaves. Here are the materials that you'll need for today. Of course, you'll need water and a paper towel or a towel to dry your brushes on. You'll also need watercolor paper, preferably 100% cotton, 140-pound cold press. And the paints that we're going to be using today are Permanent Rose, Cadmium Yellow, and Sap Green. And we are going to add a little bit of Indigo into this Sap Green later, but you could also substitute that for Payne's Gray. The brushes that I'm using today are my size 8 round brush. This is by Fumui. They just sent me these and I've been testing them out, loving them so far. But any brand round brush will do. A size 8, a size 6, a size 10, depending on how big your paper is that you're using today. This is Fumui's size 1 detail brush. It's also a round. Again, any smaller round brush that you have will be sufficient here. I'm just going to use this to drop in some color in our flowers later. And finally, if you have a liner brush, this is a size 0 liner brush. I'm going to use it to throw in some details on our flowers. But if you have a small round brush, you could get away with using that for the details as well. The difference between the round brush and the liner brush is because these bristles are so long, they just have this extra little like spring and bounce to them that you don't get with a round brush with shorter bristles. And so I find that it gives me really flawless line details in my flower petals. All right, let's get started. Grab your larger round brush. So in this case, mine is a size 8. And you're going to want to start with clean water. Now, I've tinted my water with some of the Permanent Rose so that it's easier for you to see, but you will not want to do that. You want your water to be clear, and make sure that you have good lighting so that you can see clearly where your paper is wet and where it's dry. So just bringing a lamp really close by or changing the angle of your lights can help so that you can see really clearly where you've put water on your paper and not. So we're going to paint a flower, and we're going to paint the petals with just water first. This is great if you are newer to loose florals and you're still working on those petal shapes. So maybe when you make a petal shape, you're not always pleased with it. With this method, by painting your petals with water first, if you don't like a petal shape, you can just dry it and it will completely disappear because it was just clear water, and then you can try it again. So this is a really great method for starting out, but it also is going to let us use some techniques that are unique to watercolor by starting off with the water this way. Okay, so here we go. We're going to paint 5 petals, nice and big here near the top of the paper. So there's one, and I'm making sure that it's really wet. I need more pigment in there so that you can see it better. If you enjoy watercolor tutorials, don't forget to like and subscribe or comment. As a new content creator, any engagement you can provide is extremely helpful to me. So I'm just experimenting here with my petal sizes and shapes. Tint that water even more. It's not showing up very well. Okay, so I'm going over my petal shapes again a little bit just to make sure that they are nice and wet and shaped just how I want them. So you can see that a little bit there on camera. Okay, once you have your petal shapes, it's time to drop in some pigment. So I'm going to grab the permanent rose and just start dropping it in from the center of the petals. I'm actually going to pull my petal centers in a little bit so they come together more. Look at how fun it is to watch the paint bleed. All right, so I'm grabbing some more permanent rose and we're just dropping that in. It will naturally start working its way towards the edge of your petals. Since you have a lot of water already on your paper, you want to add in a lot of pigment because the water that's already on your page is going to dilute the color a little bit. So use more pigment than you normally would. Drop a little more pink right here. In nature, not always, but often, the centers of flowers are the darkest parts. So I will often add in some extra color near the center. Okay, now clean off your brush. I'm going to switch over to my size 1 round brush, but if you have a good tip on your larger round brush, you could get away with using that as well. And now we're going to add in a little bit of cadmium yellow just along the edges of the flower petals. And we're going to let the colors kind of run into each other because yellow and pink, when mixed together, make this really pretty kind of peachy color. So we don't care if they touch. We were careful not to use a color that would not mix well, like green. If I was trying to add green to the ends of my petals right now, it would not blend so well. It would make kind of like a brown muddy color. All right, so we've got our edges there. And now I'm going to just kind of move this paint around to make sure I get it all the way to the edge and let those colors kind of mix and mingle a little bit. I think I want to add a little more yellow to like these edges here. I just love the combination of yellow and pink. I use it a lot. There we go. Now feel free to add even more pink down here at the base of your petals if you feel like your paint is not dark enough. Also, keep in mind that after this dries, it is going to be lighter than what we're seeing here. I'll add a little bit more pink. All right. Now, while we are waiting for that to dry, we can add in our stem and some leaves. So I'm still using my size 1 round brush, and I'm going to tap into this Sap Green here. All right, Sap Green. All right, so there's our stem. Now for our leaves, switching back over to the larger round brush, I'm going to paint them with water first and then add in the pigment, just because it's fun. And also by adding water first, again, if you don't like the way that your leaf looks, you can let it dry and try again. And when we do add the pigment, it's going to make a harder edge around the outside of the leaf, which is a really cool look that is very unique to watercolor. But that only really happens when you add water first. All right, so let's do... I'm just going over it with more water to make sure I have enough in there. All right, now I'm going to drop in my Sap Green. Look at the way it explodes. This Daniel Smith Sap Green really tends to go crazy when you add it to water. It can be fun to watch. All right, I'm just keeping it near the top of the leaf for now. We're going to go back in with a darker Sap Green mix in a minute. So let's do our other leaf. All right, and drop in some Sap Green. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of indigo to this Sap Green to make it darker. And this will be like a nice shadow on the bottom of our leaves. So more Sap Green first. Okay, so that's just like a nice darker version of that green. I'm just going to fill the bottom in with that. And then do the same to the other side. Just gives it some fun details. And I'm going to use my smaller round brush, and it's clean and damp, and just kind of blend these colors together a little bit. There's a lot of water in there. All right, now we're going to let our flower petals dry completely, and then we'll go in and add a few details. So you can either let it dry naturally, or you can use a heat gun or a hair dryer. I'm going to use my hair dryer. Okay, so my flower is dry now, and I just wanted to zoom in here and show you how pretty the edges of our flower are. This is because we added water first. It creates this hard, dark edge around each petal. And the colors blend nicely into each other. And we have some of this like fading here where the colors didn't quite reach, but it looks kind of cool. I think it just gives it that unique watercolor look, and that's what I love about watercolor. All right, now it's time to add in some details. So I'm grabbing my liner brush, or you can stick with your smaller round brush, and you just want to use a very dark value of the permanent rose. So I'm just grabbing a little bit more off of my palette here just to darken this up. Right, and then start from the very center of each petal and just kind of flick your wrist out and make little curved lines coming from the center of the flower. I need darker pink. Okay, so now we have a few delicate petal details, and I'm going to, normally I like to put some on the ends of the petals too, but since the ends of our petals have kind of this yellowy orange, I think I'm just gonna leave that because I don't wanna mess up the colors that we have going there. Okay, so once these little line details dry, we can add in our flower center and then we'll be all done. Okay, so for our flower center, we're going to use a really dark value of cadmium yellow. So I'm just gonna pull some more straight off my palette here to make it nice and dark. And for flower centers, I just keep them simple. I'm just gonna dab this yellow paint in kind of a circular motion here in the center of my flower, making sure that I leave some white gaps, and call it done. So there we have a simple, easy, beautiful watercolor flower. I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I'll see you in the next one.